now with the COVID and everything, I mean, globalization is kind of in a standstill.
Yeah. Oh, that was the worst. I mean, obviously that was bad for everybody and everybody's business, but specifically, I mean, I haven't had a song camp since my last one was January 2020. So we had to do all music remotely, and there's just something that's the downside of digital is it loses humanity, the humanity of making music. And all the songwriters agree, we still make great songs over Zoom or Skype or whatever, FaceTime, but it misses that camaraderie, that kind of moment, the feeling of being in a room together, someone playing a guitar or piano, and then just kind of riffing melodies. That doesn't exist digitally. And so the music becomes, I think, a little
hollow,
a little lifeless. And so that was depressing for the last year and a half. Hopefully we can get back together. I know in LA now the studios have opened up, so people are starting to write in rooms together again, which is good. But just to get them to Korea, it might be a few more months.
Well, vaccination,
yeah. Hopefully,
herd immunity.
Yeah.
Once that's established, but all countries differ. So
in timeline and
I mean, the amount of vaccination is done, and availability of the vaccines is also different. So it's another whole different story there.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot just have the US, although it's completely vaccinated, then you have the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. My family is vaccinated, but I'm not. But I could go back to the United States and get vaccinated, but then it's still not recognized here. So even if I came back, I'd still have to quarantine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they haven't lifted that kind of restriction yet. So I'm waiting for that restriction to be lifted. So then I think
it'll come soon.
Hopefully.
Yes.
I'm hoping.
People are really becoming weary and tired, and their patience is running out. It's been over a year now.
It's been, because the last song camp I had was January 2020, and then I remember February, that's when kind of the outbreak in Korea started for COVID. And then the United States was still, my family and friends, oh, what's this COVID thing? It still hadn't really hit the US or at least been recognized. And then by April, I think, it had taken over everywhere.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
And it's just funny how you mentioned how every country is in a different level, because in the beginning Korea was kind of at the forefront of how to tackle the first wave, and then the United States was behind, and now the United States is pretty much over it.
With the vaccination,
success of that. Yeah, it's successful vaccination, and they're always starting to open up, and Korea is now kind of one of the countries
worrying about the second wave.
And so it just kind of flip-flopped, and so and I know, for example, I like in Australia, I have a writer in Australia, and he said he might not be vaccinated until next year in Australia. So it just everybody's on a different timeline, which
some countries, mostly in Africa, not even a single dose of vaccines are available in some of the African countries.
Right.
It's terrible. Anyway, we talked about the music industry and this kind of pandemic, pandemic is causing disruption, especially in this type of. The musicians are not able to have concerts.
Yes.
Which is something that you lose touch with your fans and your audience, which is something.
Yes.
I'm sure that the musicians are suffering as a result of that. What do you?
That's the biggest, for all aspects of the music industry, the biggest form of royalties are performance royalties in the publishing world. So not having performance royalties for a year and a half is awful.
Wow.
So not just for the artists, but for the songwriters, the composers, it's pretty terrible. And then, as you said, you can't connect to the fans. You can't build a fan base without going out and having shows. So the lack of concerts, and what's funny is you've noticed there's an influx of like online concerts, but it's just not. I mean, and you see these articles that say, "Oh, and they made so much money for this online concert." But then when you compare it to the actual money, and then think about all the jobs that are lost from just stage crew and lighting people and all that stuff. No touring has been the biggest detriment to the music industry, financially and also just from a fan perspective.
I suppose the fans also miss the artists, the musicians that they love performance.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has been to a concert. It's just a different experience than listening to the album or even watching something online. And just being there live it's a memory for a lot, because a lot of fans they're expensive. Concerts are expensive, and so you're lucky if you can go once. And so it's this kind of memory that you'll have for the rest of your life of the first concert you went to, or your favorite artist seeing, Paul McCartney or whoever in concert. And so to take that away from the music experience is I mean, it's detrimental to how people take in music. Digital only works so much.
Yes. It's not the same thing, absolutely. But you've learned something from this experience.
Yes.
Have you been able to come up with something as an alternative to these kinds? Because the pandemic, although the COVID there will be an end to it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be over for totally. I mean, there will be another pandemic or whatever coming. How soon, I don't know, but
I think the answer right now that a lot of the companies are developing are these kind of online experiences. I think the problem with the online experiences, as we just talked about, are that they're lacking in a sort of interaction, an interaction with the fans. And so we're gonna have to, if online concerts are the future, which I hope that's not the case, but if they are the future, we have to figure out a way to make it more interactive, make it more immersive,
more feeling real.
Yes, because if you just are watching a screen, what's the difference between watching that and watching a YouTube clip? There isn't a difference. So why would someone pay $100 to basically stream a concert that they can't yell out to their artist, they can't clap. I mean, they can in their room, but there's no community to that. So we're gonna have to figure out, and I don't know the answer, but to figure out a way to create a community in the online concert world, and I don't know how to do that.
I suppose technology has to be engaged with that. Maybe VR, virtual reality, augmented reality.
I know that's a lot of companies, SM and Big Hit, are investing in kind of like artificial intelligence and that type of stuff for music, and we'll see. I don't know where it will go.
I see. Yeah. It's not the same as the real thing.
It is not. It is not.
But coming as close to you can to the real thing.
Yes.
Will be probably the task for the future.
That'll be the goal. And I'll let smarter people figure that out. We'll just keep creating music. But hopefully, but I do think that there will always be a place for live shows. And I think people crave that. They miss.
Oh yeah.
They miss, and not just music, but live sports, live, talks, or just going to like church or just congregating. Yeah. People miss that.
Yes.
Humans are meant to communicate, I think, with each other. Digital communication is not, for thousands of years or millions of years, humans didn't have digital technology. So communication is person to person.
Yeah.
And so that's ingrained in our DNA. I don't think you can ever get rid of that.
That's true. Very true.
So, and I think, like you said, people are getting weary. They want to be able to interact with each other again. And so hopefully we'll get to that point.
I hope so too. How do you envision your company in the future?
That's a good question. I mean, the stock answer is, I hope to build the next big hit entertainment, which is, I guess that's the idealistic goal. But the short-term goal is, I want to be a place. My career here has always been about music first. So even in idol music, I've always tried to push the boundaries of what is considered idol music, what is considered. I don't like to fit into a formula of this is what it sounds like. And so my company, I want it to be a place for creative people to be creative. And we'll try different things, and even though we always have to fit into, we're selling a product, so we have to fit into a certain commercialized box for some of our stuff. I still want to take chances. I want fans to think, hey, that's different, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before in this genre. So that's the overarching philosophy and goal of the company is to be recognized for the content. No matter how big or small we are, we'll have fans that like the content for the uniqueness of it. And sometimes when you do that, you're not going to be SM or big hit. And I'm fully aware of that.
So how do you see the future of Korean music industry?
I have a more pessimistic view of it. I do believe, and I gotta be careful, but I do believe that with the saturation of it, and BTS has done amazing things for the world recognizing K-pop or idol music. But I think the negative that came from it is that everybody thinks they can be BTS now. Every company. So every Korean company is now facing the US with no success so far. There hasn't been Blackpink a little bit, but nobody has achieved even half the success of BTS in the US. But everybody's focused in that direction. And I think K-pop is losing a bit of what made it popular to begin with, which is the essence of it. It has to still be Korean. And I just saw announcements from like CJ. They're going to do a K-pop style Latin group, and SM's going to do a LA-based they have a group called NCT, LA-based boy group. And I'm thinking, well, you're abandoning kind of what the point of K-pop was to begin, the Koreanness of it. And that's generally what happens. And the US has always been the big market. Everybody wants to make it there. I get that. But not everybody is cut out for it. But everybody's trying now. And I don't think that's going to work. Because what I've noticed about the US is they lose their attention span quickly for things that right now I'm not sure if K-pop is there to stay. Because it still hasn't hit the general public. Other than BTS, there hasn't been a K-pop group or artist that has even, like I mentioned, come close to being in the periphery. Periphery of the American public. So, how long are we going to try this until we come back to the Koreanness of it? And again, I might just be the older guy that goes, I miss K-pop when it was older, or when it, I miss Dongbangsingi and those things and Sotechi. But so we'll see. But I do think that there's a lot of positivity because there's more consumers, possible consumers for the content. But if you spread yourself too thin, sometimes you lose the essence of what you're doing.
You may be hitting a very interesting point because, as you say, now the so-called K-pop companies or music industry companies are trying to find localization and trying to put in their style of system with the people from that country or that area. But as you said, then how can you call that K-pop?
Right.
And that's a kind of a fundamental question mark. And in a way, as you say, K-pop is not deep rooted in the US because it's not from the US.
Yes.
And therefore, the U.S., although it has different music, but it's very deep-rooted. It has an origin
Yes.
where it comes from. The only, I would say, the only successful musicians in the U.S. that really is not from the U.S. is from the U.K., which is quite similar.
Right.
They speak the same language. They
language.
have cultural, historic heritages.
Yes.
Similar, very. So, in that sense, I suppose it may not be K-pop, but it may be kind of the system that K-pop has,
Right.
and maybe as an industry or companies are trying to utilize that.
Right.
I don't know.
And what's interesting too is I don't know how, specifically the US and growing up in the US, it's a very individualistic country. You're taught from a young age, you can do whatever you want as an individual. But the idol training system is not about being an individual.
Collective.
It's a collective, and it's about, it's there's orders. There's a level or a system to how things get done. I don't see that working in the United States, that system, because the youth in America don't believe that they need to take orders from someone above them.
Yeah.
And they don't also believe that they need to work within a group. I mean, the goal in America is to be a star, not what, like every group that's ever existed has broken up because someone wanted to go on and be an individual star. So you're not gonna get a group like, for example, Soñyoshide, who's been around for what, 10 years? Or you're not gonna get that in the United States. Even what's the group? Fifth Harmony, which was a girl group of marginally successful girl group in the US and the UK. I think they were only together for a couple of years before they all disbanded to be solo acts. So we'll see if this kind of system works. And also in Korea, the management companies control everything. They're the PR, the marketing, they're the booking agent, the talent, they're everything. That's not how it works in the US. In the US, you have, you're signed, as an artist, you're signed to different specialized companies. You have your PR company, you have your booking agent, you have your manager and your management company, and you have your record label. They're all separated. So this whole all-in-one thing, I also don't think that'll work in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see how the system applies to, like you said, it's a different culture.
It's
and
a different culture.
Different mindset. And why does K-pop, why has K-pop worked in Japan and China in the past? I think because the cultures, while they're very different, they have some overlap. More overlap. There's more overlap to the cultures, I think, in Asia. Than, like you mentioned, the UK and the US overlap. So it makes sense. So we'll see. We'll see. I guess I sound in the last 10 minutes very pessimistic about it.
No.
But I try to look at it from a realistic perspective.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that has to be addressed somehow.
Yeah.
And you need to question it loudly, open, in order to find an answer.
Right.
So I think that's a very important point. Well, we talked about your music experience and what you're doing in Korea and how you envision the music industry of Korea to develop or to change in the coming years. So when are you launching your idol group?
The goal is the end of next year.
End of next year.
Yeah. So
maybe by that time we will overcome the COVID.
Yes, that was the plan. Now is the perfect time to train because for the groups that are out now, they have to navigate this world of no concerts, which cuts down on like merchandise sales and a lot of things, and so not just gate sales. So yeah, so this is the perfect time to train, and hopefully by the end of next year, COVID will kind of be overcome. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles to that point. Right now I think we have six Korean girls, 1 Japanese girl, and 1 Thai girl.
Oh, it's one group?
they're trainees. I haven't picked the final members of the group, but just who's training with my company right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the final analysis, some of them will be kind of
will be let go,
excluded.
Yes, I mean so far we have. I mean, just the idol system is you have trainees, and then as they train, you just start letting go the ones that don't have the potential. So we've let go 6
already.
Yeah, already. And then we'll get down to probably 4 or 5, and then debut with those 4.
Well, it was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was.
I'm grateful for your insight, and I have been enlightened. Now I understand a little bit about the K-pop industry. Thank you for coming, and
thank you for having me.
We can do this again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, cheers.
Yeah. Oh, cheers.